the country with no money, no ability to survive or get back home. And then he has his assistant come in. Andrew's pissed off. The only way he's going to forgive you and allow you to stay here is by you now getting exploited for your labor. The slimy fucking pimp method of the game should be sold, not told. All this consequentialist shit that I'm talking about.
All right, guys, got JW here. You're fighting next week, right?
No, he backed out.
Elf backed out?
Just, I guess the sponsors, I've come to get familiar with a couple of the CEOs of the, I guess, online casinos that were sponsoring events with Elf. And for whatever reason, they backed out. I don't think the fight was really worth having. I was saving his ass. Obviously, he wanted to fight Sean Perry.
Yeah.
There's really no one else that could draw an audience other than myself. And, I assumed that Elf was kind of downplaying his capacity as a boxer, but he's still a non-athlete, with limited capacity. I think there's a lot more virtue signal than virtue in his approach. And it seems like his community was starting to get frustrated with the lack of materialization of these events that he was promoting. So
I could see that.
I guess it's time to get over it. I like to stay ready so I don't have to get ready. So I'm always in like a war-ready type mentality that allows me to be at my best physically, spiritually, financially. You got to expose yourself to uncertainty, be friends with uncertainty to increase your ability to deal adequately with life's complexities, have an adequate response for anything life throws at you.
I mean, you took that fight on 5 days' notice, man.
1 day notice.
Oh, one day?
He told me, and I told my brother over here that I suspected he was going to do it based on, he was kind of teasing the community. Oh, if JW dropped down to 175, what are the odds, me versus JW? He knows that there's no simulation possibility in millions of attempts that he's seeing me. I mean, anyone has a boxer's chance, theoretically, but based on his technique and his lack of athleticism, his lack of quick twitch muscle fiber development, there's nothing he could have done with me, and he would have got hurt because I'm not throwing a fight for some, petty opportunity, especially when he's trying to create a market for the wagering. Who would I be to take a dive or something like this and fuck a lot of people over? I'm not sure if you allow cussing.
Yeah, we'll just believe it, but you're good.
For sure. But, it's kind of petty. I appreciate Elf. It kind of happened spontaneously where the first Mazi Sean Perry event unfolded, and a friend of mine hit me up. He saw my brother Keno at the event, and he was like, why didn't he hit you up? Because I'm willing to bet any sports bettor. Obviously, I don't want to fight a professional fighter, but I stay ready. I train. I'm in tip-top condition year-round, and I have a lot of experience with actual fist fighting, like getting in real fights. Not to valorize that, but if you can't resolve issues through dialogue and other methods, at some point you do need to resort to violence to get back to a shared sense-making capacity instead of just stagnating and degenerating into disarray. So when my friend, knowing that I'd fight anybody in the sports betting world for $250,000, $500,000, whatever they're willing to put up, saw that my brother Keno was there, he said, why didn't he bring you? Keno was under the impression he was going to do security for Floyd Mayweather. Got there. Obviously, it was a shit show the first time they fought. Mazi was out of gas.
Yeah.
Sean Perry's a non-athlete. It was just kind of disgraceful in terms of like a boxing event.
Yeah.
But it generated a lot of attention. The kid Elf, he's doing a lot of numbers on X, which God bless Elon Musk for giving us a decentralized exponential tech platform that allows us the possibility to start sharing information with each other. Sense-making is pivotal in terms of finding solutions for the multipolar traps we're dealing with, the polarized societies of not only the woke left, but now the woke right. I know Ruben brought it up, and there was some comments, people don't like to hear it, but the parallels between intersectional feminism and now characters like Myron Gaines and the incels, Nick Fuentes, the commonality being resentment, intersectional feminists having deep resentment for inequitable treatment, being able to differentiate between equity and equality is important in terms of the DEI agenda that was top-down imposed upon us by the globalist agenda.
Tri-light from Therasage is no joke. Medical grade red and near infrared light with 3 frequencies per light, deep healing, real results, and totally portable. It's legit. Photo biomodulation tech in a flexible on-body panel. This is the Tri-light from Therasage and it's next level red light therapy. It's got 118 high-powered polychromatic lights, each delivering 3 healing frequencies, red and near infrared from 580 to 980 nanometers. Optimal penetration, enhanced energy, skin rejuvenation, pain relief, better performance, quicker recovery, and so much more. Therasage has been leading the game for over 25 years and this panel is FDA listed and USB powered. Ultra soft and flexible and ultra portable. On-body red light therapy I use daily and I take it everywhere I travel. This is the Thera O3 ozone module from Therasage. It's a portable ozone and negative ion therapy in one. It boosts oxygen, clears and sanitizes the air, and even helps your mood. It's a total game changer at home or on the go. This little device is the Thera O3 ozone module by Therasage, and it's one of my favorite wellness tools. In the sauna, it boosts ozone absorption through your skin up to 10 times. Oxygenating your blood and supporting deep detox. Outside the sauna, it purifies the air, killing germs, bacteria, viruses, and mold, and it improves mood and sleep with negative ion therapy. It's compact, rechargeable, and perfect for travel, planes, offices, hotel rooms, you name it. It's like carrying clean energy wherever you go. This is a Thera H2 Go from Therasage, the only bottle with molecular hydrogen structured water and red light in one. It hydrates, energizes, and detoxes water upgraded. The Thera H2 Go from Therasage isn't just a water bottle, it's next level hydration. It infuses your water with molecular hydrogen, one of the most powerful antioxidants out there. That means less oxidative stress, more energy, and faster recovery. But here's what makes it stand out. It's the only bottle that also structures your water and adds red light to supercharge it. It's sleek, portable, and honestly, I don't go anywhere without it.
The World Economic Forum was giving incentives for companies that would essentially synthesize their corporation with nonprofit organizations. They're called B Corp certifications, where they don't have as much liability to the shareholder, and they wanted to bring forth what's called stakeholder capitalism. You know, and the mechanism was going to be through COVID-19, a complete restructuring, them knowing what laid ahead in terms of America withdrawing from globalization. You know, it's important. Remember we talked about when I saw David Pakman on here, leading the public astray with this inaccurate perspective on President Trump's tariff plan, which I told you was to incentivize local manufacturing from American companies rather than outsourcing manufacturing to places like China. See, these same companies that signal diversity, equity, inclusion, all these social justice virtues are the same people outsourcing child labor in other countries. The hypocrisy of these companies in order to essentially have less liability to the shareholder, tax incentives, all these type of self-serving virtue signaling benefits. So in terms of the geopolitical spectrum, as it ties into what's called the meta crisis, these novel, overarching risks, existential risks that are converging towards system failure, whether we're talking about the AI singularity approaching, whether we're talking about essentially our ability to create godlike tools and not having godlike governance to control these tools, perhaps an artificial detonation of a nuclear bomb. See, in 1953, it's called the twin nuclei problem. Simultaneously, we discovered the 3D double helix structure of DNA, unlocking biotech and bioweapon capacity, a la COVID-19, you know, gain-of-function research in the Wuhan laboratory, intentional release onto the public to bring forth what they were intending to be called the fourth industrial revolution, the great reset that people thought was conspiracy theory. It was the last-ditch effort of the globalist agenda. Thank God Kamala didn't get into office. Thank God we now have individuals like Peter Thiel behind our government, you know, and our intelligence agency with Palantir, these type of things that are a necessity, as I said, to have a shared overarching sense-making capacity. People are deferring their sense-making to the group now. Groupthink has been weaponized through these DEI mechanisms. Like when we talk about diversity, and this all ties into when I'm differentiating between equality and equity, are we talking about diversity of perspective?
Brought to you by Amnesia Vodka, crafted to leave an impression.
Diversity of thought, diversity of skill set, or diversity of skin color, which should be prioritized in a system that we're trying to optimize output so we can actually be productive again, stop the inflation, stop the stagnation, and redistribute wealth to not necessarily people at the bottom that haven't tried adequately, but to those in the middle, the working class that, based on many different factors like comparative advantages being held by the corporations, being able to buy in bulk and rendering mom and pop shops obsolete, gaining so much of the wealth, these power law distributions of wealth that tie into like this incel problem. Power law distributions in general have really accelerated dysfunction in society. Diversity of thought, diversity of skill, diversity of representation in the Make America Great movement, an increase in Hispanic turnout, an increase in the Black male voter, increase in all these different demographics. That's not diversity to Democrats. They're looking for a specific kind of diversity to virtue signal that's instrumentalized to perpetuate their agenda, which is obviously stealth warfare tactics imposed by enemies of ours like China over the years through methods like the long march through the institution. We've noticed all of our elite institutions have been captured, primarily the nuclear family unit. Single parenthood is a major problem. Young men aren't able to have a strong man in the house to mimic their behavior after and mirror themselves after masculinity, mastery, aggression, risk-taking, dominance, these type of things that the market chooses for, that women are finding themselves having a hard time competing with in this new age of feminism, which doesn't really valorize or lionize feminine traits like being empathetic, being naive, being gullible. What happened to the woman that was in love with their man and gullible enough to believe anything he said in terms of that ride or die mentality where he's able to go to work, provide for the family, protect her, allowing her to derive true fulfillment from motherhood, from her mother's intuition, from her empathetic capacity to understand when he had a rough day at work, to incentivize him to continue sacrificing immediate gratification, the corporate solutions that are imposed upon us for the long-term responsibility that all men need to get back in touch with, the eternal characteristics of life, which is answering God's calling. Every one of us has a calling from God that we need to make visible through our labor. Labor making the love we have for God, for our country, for our women, for our children, for our community, visible through hard labor, through delaying gratification and doing the difficult things that many people aren't willing to do. Now, in terms of equity and equality, equity is equal outcomes. Equality is equal opportunity. We are the country of equal opportunity and freedom. And this is what incentivizes traditionally men to partake in the American dream that's been eroded. Our ancestors were able to believe, and I want to get into the nature of reality and the impact of our subconscious belief as it pertains to shaping our outcomes. If you have a victim mentality and you're nihilistic and you're not attached to the future and you have no meaning why? If you understand your why, you can bear any how. When you understand your why, the how and the what emerge naturally. So it's really all about understanding what you're doing it for. Meaning, the hero's journey has been eroded from society. This is the antidote to nihilism. You see that a lot of these young men, these incels in particular, are so disconnected that the only thing that touches them is the extremism of a Nick Fuentes, of a Myron Gaines, of a Kanye. It's disgusting to see the type of Machiavellian opportunist antics that Kanye's resorting to, considering he is one of the greatest designers and artists of our time. He needs to understand what design is. Design is the synthesis of science and art. Art is the beauty that reduces resistance through emotional connection. He's targeting the most programmable individuals in society, these incels. I saw you at Rollo Tomato.
I hope you guys are enjoying the show. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the show a lot with the algorithm. Thank you.
I see on here not too long ago, and the whole red pill community disguising content, the resentment, cloaking it with clarity that this is the problem, this is the solution to go about it, when in reality, it all ties together. As I said, the parallels between the woke right, which are, the incels that are being reoriented towards anti-Semitism, towards domestic terrorism. Resentment is the spirit of murder. This is the story of Cain and Abel, the first murderers in history. You notice that society has way too many Cains running around and not enough Abels. Way too many virtue signalers, meaning self-serving individuals, as opposed to actual virtue, the eternal characteristics, acting out of love, love-based intent, doing the right thing like Abel. God accepted his wholehearted sacrifice and resented and rejected Cain's half-hearted sacrifice. Cain had so much resentment to God that his brother was being blessed based on his devotion, his commitment to objectivity, to absolute truth, to beauty. This is the issue. AI isn't our enemy. Other countries aren't necessarily our enemy at this point. Our issue, our enemy is our incapacity to coordinate with each other anymore, to actually discern between the real and the fake, because we have so many trolls on social media hiding under a veil of anonymity. These incels, if you look at like Myron Gaines supporters, Nick Fuentes supporters, what's the probability of any of them having their actual name on the profile, their actual picture, a check mark? We need skin in the game on social media so we can remove all the noise from the signal, and so people can actually think for themselves again and differentiate between the real virtue and the virtue signal. All the demons out here that are projecting their own resentment towards the country at this point because they're not able to access women anymore. Because these women want what? The 666 problem. They want a man that's 6 feet tall with 6 figures and a six-pack. How attainable is that for a 21-year-old fresh out of college? See, women want a man that's fully actualized from the jump now, as opposed to building. Any society that valorizes the influencer over the builder deserves to collapse. And this is the existential risk we're dealing with, civilizational cultural decay and collapse. This is what I talked about, the meta crisis, where these novel risks are emerging. The technological acceleration making the probability of these instances more likely. As tech gets cheaper, the probability of these type of disasters goes up, and our inability to govern these type of problems. Like I said, with the twin nuclei problem in 53 simultaneously, Jim Crick and another, it's split in my mind right now, discovered that the 3D double helix structure of DNA, and also at Los Alamos, we discovered by splitting the atom, we create the nuclear bomb. So our ability as humans, having a neocortex, allows us to think abstractly, unlike any other species. You understand that, right?
Yeah.
What other species has the ability to notice that a broken rock can be abstractly used as a tool? And even more abstractly, the sharper the rock, the better the tool. Over time, we've developed technologies that allow us to radically modify our environments, unlike any other species. Think about a horse that's hardwired for survival because their environments never change. On day one of a horse's life, it's running. It's hardwired. A monkey, day one, holding its mother. Humans go through this elongated, neotenous, helpless state because we're born, as John Locke called, with tabula rasa, the blank slate. This is the essence of neuroplasticity, our ability to rapidly rewire our neurological circuitry to increase flexibility and adaptability to the radically modifying times that these technological advancements are creating. Now, this ties into a Peter Thiel concept. He was heavily influenced by his professor, René Girard, and the concept of Girardian mimesis and mimetic desire. The root of all conflict is the fact that we're born with a blank slate and don't even know what we desire. We desire what other people desire. And when we can't have what other people desire is when issues arise. Nobody has any authentic individual perspective anymore. That's why people are so programmable. These young, complacent men, obviously, who benefits most from all of this? From obesity, from addiction, from depression, anxiety, these emergent symptoms of fear, of uncertainty.
Is it the globalists?
The globalists, the big tech overlords, our digital overlords, big pharmaceutical companies, they benefit most. Think about everything in life that leads to growth and leads to actual fulfillment. It feels like shit initially, but incremental progress is scalable. This is the nature of the Fibonacci sequence. Nature's optimized growth pattern. You start with 1, you do the minimum you can, and then you build upon that previous term. So you have 1 and 1 equal 2, 2 and 1 equal 3, 3 and 2 equal 5, 5 and 3 equal 8. You start to get a concave upward movement where you're having compounding rewards. This is how Warren Buffett built his wealth, as opposed to the quick fix corporate solutions that diminish and have a convex downward function, downward derivative over time. Think about a junkie putting heroin in his veins the first time. At T0, meaning time 0, the first time a junkie puts heroin in his veins, what's the reward? Max, minimal, or somewhere in between? Maxed out. And every time thereafter, because of the diminishing returns of quick fix corporate solutions, that burst of relief, that alleviation of the symptoms from our culture and from our perspectives and just society at large begins to diminish. So obviously, addiction and engagement are two sides of the same coin. As you need more engagement, addiction arises. These are the symptoms that we see from the incels that are convinced that nothing they do matters, that they're always going to be overlooked. Then they develop a deep rage for society through resentment. You know, this is the slave morality. Are you familiar with Nietzsche's concept of the master-slave morality?
No.
You know, the master morality is masculinity, essentially. Dominance, aggression, risk-taking, analytical capacity, the things that the free market chooses for, that men have a proclivity for. That's why men and women aren't able to compete really in the market. There's a vast number of multivariable analytical points that support this. Obviously, men and women have similar IQs. If you look at a bell curve distribution, around 100, but women's are much flat, much steeper. The distribution, meaning they hover around the plus or minus 1 standard deviation around the mean. Men's bell curve distribution is much flatter, meaning that men occupy both extremes of the spectrum. We're the dumbest in society and also the smartest. And these are the individuals that are being oppressed out of society through DEI mechanisms, through postmodern neo-Marxist culture. You familiar with this term of postmodern neo-Marxism? This is the ideology behind intersectional feminism. Individuals like Jean-Paul Sartre, inverting the Cartesian notion of essence preceding existence, inverting it, convincing people that God didn't instill an innate greatness within all of us, an incomprehensible potentiality within all of us that needs to be actualized through, as I said, the Fibonacci sequence, nature's optimized growth, being sacrificial, being disciplined, conserving what you've already built, and building and increasing the base we're multiplying from, to where you hit that critical point where a phase transformation occurs. Just as there's a critical point when you start to heat up water, when it changes states into gas, or when you decrease the temperature and it changes states into a solid. Individuals can transform the state of their experience by aggregating energy over time and hitting a point where it has cascading effects, runaway effects, where it feels like it's an overnight sensation, but it's really just God knowing you're prepared for it and willing to answer the call that all of us have innate within us. It takes intuition. It takes rigorous empathy, being able to contextualize someone else's emotional state. If you walk past someone and look in their eyes, you have a responsibility to them to do what you can to actualize the concept of humanity, where we're all compassionate for each other. Think about our small tribal settings throughout our evolutionary history. We weren't post-industrial megacities. We were in small, it's called the Dunbar number, where we all have about 100, the capacity to intimately know about 150 people at once. We were all in these small tribal settings where everyone knew each other and our emotional states were correlated positively, meaning It's natural for me to see you happy and succeeding in life, and to me almost vicariously live through you. And it's called compersion, where you're happy, I'm happy from seeing you happy. That positive feedback loop of a correlated emotional state. Similarly, on the other end of the spectrum, where if I see you down, I should feel pain too. We should see someone on the street homeless, or our loved ones addicted to drugs, and be pissed off and hurt for them, to the extent that you're a sociopath if you numb yourself to that harm. This is decoupling yourself from their emotional state.
Most people have.
And this is my point here, is we've inverted this small tribalistic correlated emotional state now, where you notice that people are sadistic. They feel good when they see other people down bad. They feel good when someone gets canceled, loses their job, fails. And also jealousy. This is the resentment I talk about. The jealousy of feeling like shit when someone else is on the rise, This is an inversion of our natural inclination as human beings. This is what I'm talking about in actualizing the concept of humanity. Now, this ties back into the overarching theme of what are the solutions? What is the antidote for nihilism and the modern domestic terrorist, which is the man that is involuntary celibate, unable to access women because of power law distribution dynamics. Are you following with what I mean by that?
You're saying guys that struggle to get a woman, basically?
Well, the power law distribution dynamics that are emergent, just like in wealth, where we notice the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. Jesus spoke about it on the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew, when he said, to those who have much, much more will be given. And to those that have little, even more will be taken. That's the beauty of the Bible. It even though it may not be literally true, these phenomenon, it doesn't need to. It gives us an overarching mechanism to have a shared imagination and a shared sense-making capacity, so we can have town hall-like dynamics, actualize the concept of democracy, where we have an educated citizenry, which we don't because of our failed institutions like the educational system and the fourth estate, the content-creating corporate media that wants to stir division and have us separated and confused by they want inauthentic men that are distracted by the distractions from old distractions. It's constant distraction that you don't know what the fuck to think anymore. So you're going to defer your sense-making to the next man. Couple that with our proclivity for mimicking others and desiring what others desire, with these DEI policies where, as I said, we've defined diversity, equity, distinguishing it from equal outcomes. Equity is the socialist notion of equal opportunity or equal outcome, which Kamala Harris was running on that. Even in 2020, as a vice president, she put the commercial out where there was a cartoon showing not all of us start out at the same place, but the goal is to get us to end up at the same place. What would incentivize the smartest men in society to sacrifice everything, given our proclivities for isolation and left brain logical thinking based on the lateralization differences in our brain? Women have a bigger corpus callosum, the group of neurons that connects both hemispheres of the brain, so they're able to multitask better than men, which allows them to be unbelievable quarterbacks of the household. We need to return to the matriarchy of the household, the patriarchy of civilizational design and productivity in the free market. Now, women being able to multitask, be great mothers, keep the house clean, derive extreme fulfillment. Now, obviously, there's outliers. There's women that can compete with men. But generally, women are more unhappy than ever, more medicated, more suicidal. In fact, suicide rates amongst teenage girls has more than doubled over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Women aren't meant to be bullied by trolls online with anonymous accounts, because they know that if they got caught speaking like that in real life, they'd probably get their life taken or their job taken or lose their woman or lose their kids. But because they have a fake account, they say Hail Hitler and all this goofy shit. It's fucking nonsense that Kanye is resorting to these type of antics, the consequentialist Machiavellian antics. You notice how every virtue signaling goofy dude wants to come in here and talk about, Robert Greene, the 48 laws of power. That shit is archaic and primitive. I'm distinguishing between the solution, which is the deontological approach to ethics, meaning doing the right thing and not worrying about the outcome, as opposed to the consequentialist worrying about the consequences, meaning increasing pleasure, decreasing pain by any means necessary, justifying the means to attain that end by any means. This is why relationships are transactional now. This is why women view men as a tool to attain wealth, as opposed to accepting a man that is just coming out of college, that's willing to do the difficult work, that's willing to climb the corporate ladder, start off at the bottom, and work his way up by being useful and a man of value and principles and being trustworthy and consistent and predictable and partaking in the American dream. Why would a young man who's entitled to the female perspective take that route when he knows, unless he has a 6-figure job and a particular lifestyle, women aren't, you see where the entitlement emerges right out of college? That's why when I see young, hardworking men at Chipotle managing, doing it the right way, as if God's in the room watching them, you know, I tell them, you are on the fast track to success, brother. God is watching all of this. And you may not feel the benefits of it now, but it's aggregating. And when you're at that point where you can handle the load, he's going to drop it on you. As opposed to the Machiavellian, consequentialist, modern ethical approach where, like I said, everything is transitory. Who prioritizes this? Is it rational human values that prioritize this, or the corporate value structure? See, what I talk about is bringing forth the cultural revolution in America, a resurgence of American traditional values, which is the American dream, which is masculinity, which is everything that BLM in 2020 tried to convince as being non-virtuous. This is the inversion of the master morality that I talked about towards the slave morality. This is what modern Christianity has done. You know, these misinterpretations of the Bible, like turning your cheek, the meek shall inherit the earth. You hear Jordan Peterson talk about these concepts, you know, that the definition of meek isn't to be passive, to be complacent, it's to be dangerous and have a sword capable of violence, but to keep it sheathed, to stand under control. Men should be dangerous. This is what allows men at the upper end of our IQ distributions to isolate themselves, to sacrifice everything, that belief in a shared vision for the future, creating products that are creating genuine interest in the market. What remove these screens and what new has emerged in the household or anywhere in society? We've had complete technological stagnation in society outside of computing since the sexual revolution. I know it's a lot of rambling, and I have a hard time saying anything without saying everything, but it's important to be able to connect the dots so people can begin to develop an autonomous sense of themselves and their decision-making. Everything in life emerges from your own self-image first and foremost. If you have a victim mentality and you're convinced that nothing you do is gonna work out, and that you're just looking to affirm that negative perspective through your bias for reality, you're gonna get what you're looking for. We have a group of neurons called the reticular activating system that allows us to chunk in on what's relevant to our interests. You understand that we're in a virtual reality, right?
Yeah, simulation theory.
I mean, it's really not a simulation. If you understand John Archibald Wheeler's quote, "It from bit, the universe emerged from bits of information." At the root of every equation that describes any phenomenon in the universe, they're finding the actual computer code that our internet browsers run on. Have you seen the video of the Isaac Asimov convention a few years ago with Neil deGrasse Tyson hosting?
No, what happened?
James Gates, who was the top physicist for NASA at the time, said that what befuddles him more than anything else in his findings, looking at adinkras, which are four-dimensional geometric representations of space-time, of the space-time continuum, that at the root of all these equations, he's finding Hamming code, self-correcting linear binary code, the same code that our internet browsers run on, zeros and ones. This is why power law distributions are so prevalent, the fractal nature of reality, the self-similar scale invariant nature of reality. This ties into what's called, the Pareto principle, the 20-80 rule, how 20% of the men are able to access 80% of the women. But because reality is self-similar and scale invariant, 20% of those men are able to access 80% of those women. And it keeps scaling up to where you see the top 10 richest men in the world in terms of the power law distribution of wealth, holding way too much of the money, a disproportionate amount of the money. You have a select minority of men accessing an overwhelming vast majority of female attention. Algorithmic enhancement on dating sites like Tinder, social, Instagram, these type of things. Men that get the likes get boosted in the algorithm. Then they're one-nighting the women. They're not interested in genuine connection because they're programmed by the corporate culture, rap culture really, where it's virtue to fuck a bitch and send her home in an Uber pool, to sleep with women without responsibility. It's a virtue to partake in the quick fix consumer culture, conspicuous consumption, meaning keeping up with the Kardashians, really. People are so consumed and so derive their happiness from their possessions and their pleasure. This is the hedonistic aspect of the red pill shit. You got guys like Andrew Tate, who has become regal. This dude is a hell of an orator, and I fuck with him. Tough. After he got on. Now, just to keep it all the way real, people need to be able to make sense of what he did in terms of the Loverboy method. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, you ran their webcam website.
No, but you have to get into the specifics about it, because we're at the top and everything should be full transparency. I want to get into the concept of entropy, entropy being useless information, hidden information, energy being its dichotomous opposite, useful information. If you eat something that's got a high caloric density, your body converts it into energy. You notice that our food now is highly palatable and no nutritional density. So when you put it in your body, it's useless and your body shits it out to maintain homeostasis. This is literally how we survive as human beings, being able to go out into non-equilibrium environments and intercept resources through our abstract pattern detection capacity and maintain equilibrium and perpetuate our life. The game of life being an infinite game. There are no rules. There are no boundaries. The only point of, like the music game, for instance, is there any winners and losers in the music game?
In the music industry?
In the podcast game, is there a winner and a loser? Have you ever been called a winner of the podcast game?
Yeah.
There really isn't. That's semantics. This is an infinite game. What rules are there in the podcast game? We could speak on anything. That's my point here. Is it's important to not be confined by modern culture and shrink yourself down to fit in as a modern man. It may be uncomfortable to speak about certain things because of fan bases and these different mechanisms. This is what, are you familiar with Arthur Schopenhauer?
No.
The inspiration, the philosopher, the inspiration behind Nietzsche. He spoke about the burden of the intellectual. This is why people that are in the upper distribution of intellect prefer to be isolated. Because when they come around simple-minded people, they have to shrink themselves in and it's a burden to fit in, Now, in terms of tying it back to Tate, the Loverboy method is an insidious method. It's not transparency. It's highly entropic, meaning revealing a lot of information, keeping information concealed. If you're in a club and you're popping bottles and women come up to you, be transparent and say, hey, I have a webcam service. You could come to Romania and I'll put you on camera, and for this amount of money, splitting this amount, I'm providing you services, the platform, let's split it 50-50. If she agrees to that, that's ethical. That's doing the right thing. You're providing service. It's a synergistically compounding relationship. Now, if you're tricking a woman out of the club with your black card, as he said multiple times, so I'll throw the black card down, let her go shopping. You got cars and all this hedonistic shit that women are attracted to, as opposed to building with a man. They want a man fully actualized. So when you virtue signal these type of lifestyle characteristics, and then you convince her to come and basically trick off on her, like you're gonna pay her bills and show her the life she always dreamed of. And he, in his PhD course, his Pimp and Hose degree course, he literally explicitly pointed out his method, where he creates a story that Someone from her hometown reached out to him, said that she was a prostitute. He's pissed off. He wants to kick her out now when she's been alienated from her family. She's in another country with no money, no ability to survive or get back home. And then he has his assistant come in. Andrew's pissed off. The only way he's going to forgive you and allow you to stay here is by you now getting exploited for your labor. The slimy fucking pimp method of the game should be sold, not told. All this consequentialist shit that I'm talking about, the Machiavellian tactics where, you know, if it's efficient to be deceitful. It's prioritized to be deceitful. In a game of football, play action, faking the run to pull the linebackers up is advantageous in a zero-sum game dynamic. This is why everything is crashing out, because we're not optimizing the value in cooperative games, which have exceedingly more value at their disposal than competitive games. This is what I talked about earlier with the nature of life being a finite game, zero-sum games, fixed-sum games, where life can be a positive-sum game. You're familiar with the concept of synergy?
Yeah.
Synergy is when you have diverse skills, diverse perspectives, diverse individuals that have a shared vision of the future and elegantly coordinate together. That elegant coordination with diverse skills leads to advantages, emergent advantages that exceed the total sum of the individual components. This is the closest thing we have to magic on Earth, is emergence and synergy, which are two sides of the same coin. Positive synergy is constructive interference to the signal. You ever looked into the concept of like Neoplatonism?
No.
Plotinus, the second generation extrapolation of Plato's ideas. The juxt of his main idea was that the objective purpose of life for all humans, objective meaning absolutely true, is us all returning to the source we all emanate from, God. God, we all emanate from the signal from a source, and the purpose of life is to return back home, which we can abstractly and metaphorically call heaven. We can call God. We can call love. We can call absolute truth. We can call virtue, what's good, justice, these type of immutable, eternal characteristics. You know, I've got like 30 threads open right now. I get to about a limit of about 30.
You have ADHD, don't you?
I heard you speak about that to some extent.
Yeah.
And this is the nature of our educational system, prioritizing women. Are young boys designed to be sitting in a classroom, paying attention, subservient to a teacher, or are we designed literally through our dopaminergic system to chase lions?
Chase.
They want us chasing notifications. They want us seeking intermittent rewards of, similar to a slot machine, our phone beeping off. Oh, new follower, new like. That's how people are deriving pleasure. The greatest feedback we have in life is pleasure and pain. When you're doing the right thing, your endocrine system lets you know to continue moving in that direction. When you do the wrong thing, you get pain. It's negative feedback to do error correction. Young boys in classrooms being convinced that they have ADHD and now need to be put on Adderall, for instance, or some type of big pharmaceutical solution, it ties into everything we're speaking about here. The dysfunction, the acceleration of dysfunction in our society. Let me tie this back to what I was speaking about earlier with elite institutional capture, which is called the long march through the institutions. See, I can't stand anti-Semitism. I'm not myself, but it is the woke right, and it parallels intersectional feminism. Like I said, the commonality is resentment to the power structures and entitlement. These men feel like their culture has been taken from them, and to some extent it has. But at the same time, rather than having a victor mentality and increasing your capacity as a prerequisite to success, they'd rather just take the quick fix corporate solution, get addicted to fucking alcohol, video games, get addicted to the resentment itself. Our brain can't differentiate between the imagined and what's real. And from a neurological perspective, from a neurochemical perspective, there's literature that shows it feels very similar to believe in your own victim mentality, the excuses, as it is to actually achieving the goals and the outcome that you're looking for. You know, and it ties in. Think about a woman breaking up and then what? She has her friends come over. He ain't shit, girl. They're eating ice cream, the quick fix. They're watching Love Island, the Kardashians, this mind-numbing zombie content that has no nutritional density. They want us whipped into complacency, constantly uncertain, constantly depressed, constant anxiety, looking for a burst of relief. Because why? Because we're not producing anything of value anymore as a species. Like I said, look at the room, remove the flat screen TVs, remove the computers. Products were better in the 60s. Think about microwaves. Think about all the appliances, hair dryers, cars. Shit was built to last. Your grandparents probably have the same appliances that they bought in the 70s, where now everything we buy, because it's a product of globalization being built on 6 different continents, it's designed to break down. And that's the nature of this transitory, hedonistic, ever in flux society that we've been that they've imposed upon us, as opposed to the eternal characteristics of life. The love you have for your wife, is she the one? Is she the one?
Mm-hmm.
How many arrangements of outcomes could you foresee being possible moving forward?
One.
She's only you and her together. You're heartbroken if it's you and she's not involved in your life.
Yeah.
Now, this ties into the most important concept in all of knowledge and all of epistemics, which is understanding entropy. Are you familiar with the concept of entropy?
You kind of touched on it earlier, but yeah.
Entropy is the increase of information needed to describe any state. And because of the state of the universe when time began, you know about the Big Bang, right?
Yeah. I don't know if I believe in it, but yeah.
No, it's irrefutably true.
You think so?
Yeah, when they look at space-time differential equations that explain the transformation of space and time, space over time, at the very beginning of time, 13.8 billion years ago, which we know to be true from our technological capacity, having tools like the James Webb telescope and the cosmic microwave background, we're able to detect the age of stars based on their radiation. We know that the oldest stars are 13.8 billion years. When they look back at that time period, they see an infinite curvature in space-time, which is gravity. It's the entire mass of the universe condensed into one location slightly bigger than an atom and a half. You understand what gravity is, right?
What goes up must come down.
Well, it's the curvature of space-time. This is general relativity. Einstein's greatest contribution. The energy mass equivalency. E equals mc squared. Energy equals the mass of an object. C, the constant, which is special relativity. The fact that light doesn't have any mass. Photons behave like particles, but they're actually just waves of information. They don't have any mass, so they're not affected by the curvature of space-time. They don't have any resistance to that curvature. But general relativity, anything with mass or energy warps the two-dimensional surface of space and time. So anything moving up that curvature is going to have a resistance. Obviously, the more mass, like in baseball, the higher altitude, like in Denver, you notice that the balls fly a lot further than when you're at sea level. Like in San Diego, it's harder to hit home runs.
Yeah.
The point being is the universe began at minimum entropy, maximum order. You know that with time, space is evolving into a more disordered, chaotic, random state. If you rewind that linear progression, it's organizing, it's condensing into its maximum order. Space-time, the simulation cut on with very specific initial conditions and parameters. The second law of thermodynamics is that in any closed system, entropy must always increase. This is how we perceive the passage of time, is that what's different between this state and the previous is that there was more information that emerged that was unpredictable to us. Information to describe a state is always increasing. Now, in my objective approach to life, which is irrefutable, we are in a simulation, a digital universe, as I spoke about earlier. When they look at the equations that describe any phenomenon in the universe, they're finding self-correcting linear binary code, bits of information, zeros and ones. We are in a digital universe by definition. It's not smooth and coherent. It's individual, discrete packets of information, like a cloud of gas, if you will, which proves that Space and time is a thermodynamic system itself, meaning the objective purpose of life is that this simulation is an entropy reduction trainer. Entropy is an increase in randomness, chaos, confusion, surprisal, which is fear. Think about what we fear most in life. What do you fear most in life?
It used to be death.
Literally, death. How much certainty do you have about death? What capacity do you have to reduce hidden information about death?
Just talking to people, I guess.
That are virtue signaling. No one has any knowledge
no one knows
about
for sure,
death.
yeah.
No one, people say they died and went into another realm. I don't believe any of that.
Really?
You know, and with your show, there's a lot of hoopla.
You don't
like
believe
the
in
lady,
death?
No, man. Come on. And you're even saying the cameras and shit went out?
No, they actually went out. The screen behind you went out.
You know that she's full of shit. There's no
So you
probability.
don't believe in any channeling, any psychics?
No. All of that is virtue signaling tactics, Machiavellian tactics in order to serve themselves. When people say that they can astral project and these type of things, why don't we, for any amount of money, set it up and put a piece of paper in the other room with anything on it, and they should astral project into the other room and read it to us and prove with some threshold that they actually are being honest and truthful about what's going on. But just tying back into this idea of entropy reduction as the objective purpose of life. The purpose of the simulation is to train us to lower entropy, which means evolve away from fear, randomness, disorder, chaos, confusion. The corporate solution. On the Sermon of the Mount, Jesus said, the narrow path is the righteous path. It's hard for men to sacrifice video games, sacrifice eating like shit, sacrifice random socialization, scrolling, TV, just addiction in general.
Yeah.
Coping mechanisms. See, this ties in to what ego is. Ego is simply a coping mechanism for uncertainty. The fact that our universe has fundamental laws where uncertainty is always increasing, the second law of thermodynamics, work in a constant state of cognitive dissonance. People have this idea of who they want to become and what they want their reality to be like. And when there isn't overlap with actual reality, they have a very uncomfortable feeling. Life is all about consonance between your internal beliefs, doing the right thing, knowing you're doing the right thing, knowing you deserve to materialize your goals, with your external behaviors, doing the things you do overlapping with love-based intention. Now fear being uncertainty, randomness, disorder. Think about this scenario. You see these guys on the strip that have a cup. Imagine if you walked up to one and he pulled out a briefcase with $1 million and he's like, and this is theoretical and hypothetical. He says, are you willing? There's only one cup and there's no trickery. The ball is under the cup. He says, you have to pick which cup it's under, $1 million for your life. If you don't guess correctly, I'm taking your life. Would you be willing? How willing would you be to make that bet?
I wouldn't do it.
What do you mean? There's one opportunity.
Oh, only one cup?
One cup.
Oh, I thought you meant 3 cups with the moving stuff.
That's the norm. If there's only one cup, there's one outcome possible, the low entropy state, 100% certainty, one bit of information to describe any potential configuration of outcomes possible. And you would love that opportunity, right?
Yeah, if it was one cup, yeah.
Now, as you increase another potential of outcomes by adding a second cup, you're now at the high entropy state, 50-50 probability. Zero known information about the state because they're both equally likely. This is why we do coin flips at the beginning of sporting events, because it's max entropy, equally likely to be heads or tails. You got all these gamblers coming in here talking about their ability to play blackjack and floor games in general. What ability do they have to increase clarity through reducing hidden information? What type of sense making are they really using?
Blackjack you can count in blackjack.
To some extent.
But it's not a huge advantage.
Especially with 4 decks and them observing your wager sizing. So as soon as they notice you making particular type of increases in your wager, they're going to cut you off instantly. There's no sustainability in that approach. It's all virtue signal. It's all consequentialist Machiavellian tactics to enrich themselves at the cost of society. And this is what we need to do shame these motherfuckers and blame them for societal collapse and praise those that are doing the right thing, that are transparent, which is low entropy. If you're doing things behind, let's say we go to the club tonight and we're out and about and the most beautiful woman you've ever seen comes up to you and you're rubbing on her butt and you're speaking to her. You don't cheat on her, but you were doing things that were inappropriate. Do you think your woman deserves to know about that? Or is it acceptable to keep that information hidden from her?
I would tell her.
Because you love her and she's the one. Are you a hypocrite? And would you accept that if she was doing that, the inverse, out and about? Or would you want to know?
I would want to know.
You see how transparency is directly correlated and causal to love? Which we do through lowering entropy, reducing hidden information. Now, fear being uncertainty, certainty is love. As I said, how certain are you about making this particular wager when there's only one outcome? How certain are you about spending your life with your woman if she's the one? Objectively, we all are headed to the one. In a binary universe of zeros and ones, think about when we come into this world, how much known information do we have other than epigenetic molecular modifications from our ancestors' perceptions, some type of encoded information based on the lives of our ancestors. How much authentic perspective do we have when we come into the world?
You said blank slate earlier, so none, right?
Literally zero. We start at zero, and the purpose is to go from 0 to 1, which means consistent. You have employees now. Do you want them random, entropic, or do you want them predictable, consistent?
Predictable. Low
hidden information. You know, you would love to have those type of employees. See, love is low entropy. No one can dispute this. I'm literally quantifying love. Love is minimum information to describe a state. Commitment, devotion. She knows that when you go out, there's nothing you're gonna do to violate that bond and that commitment. These are the human rational values that are objectively true, absolutely true, that we need to reorient ourselves with. Women need to be re-educated instead of looking for taking the Machiavellian approach, the consequentialist approach of finding a man that's already established to back to building with a man. Any society that prioritizes and celebrates the influencer over the builder deserves to collapse.
That's most major cities, I would say, right now.
We need to get back to building. You know, let's build. Let's synergize. I was speaking earlier about synergy. We have constructive interference from diverse perspectives, diverse skills, diverse intention, meaning love-based intent. See, from unity, we can have variation. We all emanate from the same source, the same one source, God. We don't need uniformity in personality. See, that's the Democrats. Every single Democratic perspective that you hear on here is exactly the same. How nuanced is David Pakman's from anyone else's? It's all the same shit, the victim mentality. These are domestic terrorists, the woke left and now the woke right. You know, resentment. What are they resentful for? You're in the land of opportunity. We need to be grateful as Americans and as human beings. Gratitude is what allows us to contextualize the hard work needed as men. See, the antidote to nihilism is the hero's journey. A lot of people speak about it. You're on the hero's journey. You spoke about the first time you started a podcast, it flopped. You could have given up there. You became friends with uncertainty. You said you couldn't stand to look at your first 5-10 episodes, but you kept plugging away. You kept exposing yourself to entropy, to new arrangements of possibilities and configurations of outcomes that could emerge. And you made and you made structure and virtue out of the disorder in your life, out of the chaos. You made order from the chaos. This is what life's all about. If you're in the gym and you're just going through the motions and you're not stressing the boundaries of your adaptive capacity, expanding your neurological system's capacity to respond adequately, you're not going to increase the capacity and grow. If you're trying to learn as a podcast host and as an individual, as a young leader in society, you can't just go over things you already know. You need to struggle to comprehend at some rate what you're looking at and keep chipping away until all of a sudden the dots start to connect.
Yeah.
You notice that you become something you once weren't. It's all about being reborn every single day, stepping over the corpse of your previous self. Too many people get caught up in the past and they're not looking at it as a map to the future. Any failure, if you're able to do error correction and update your mental model, is actually a success. I talked earlier about, my interest is in consciousness and understanding the fundamental laws of reality and emergent systems. What is consciousness itself to you?
I think that's a good ass question. Damn, consciousness. Well, there's the subconscious and the conscious. So you're talking about the conscious?
Yeah,
Conscious
and that's
mind?
interesting you say it because, the subconscious, whether we're speaking through a Jungian framework, the shadow, the individual shadow, which if not resolved and dealt with, if repressed and compounding over time, slips out into the collective. And that's what we're dealing with in terms of the cultural degeneracy, cultural decay. Not enough men resolving their blind spots and doing the shadow work to where they're actually leaders in a deontological sense. All we see now, this ties into our failed elite institutions, the collapse of the nuclear family unit, the collapse of our educational system, the collapse of our entertainment industry, the collapse of our three-letter agencies. See, a revolution doesn't occur when everyone knows that everything's a lie. A revolution occurs when everyone knows that everyone else knows that everything's a lie. And we're on the cusp of whether you want to get into the woo-wah, like the age of the Aquarius, moving off the material perspective, like the Newtonian belief, the standard belief of reality, that matter is in its same state, whether it's being observed or not. Quantum physics has disproven Newton's belief of materialism. We know that when we leave this room, all this matter goes into superposition, which is the opposite of finite. You notice that when we're observing this mic, it has finite variables that can be attributed: mass, momentum, location. When we go in the other room, because it's no longer needing to be rendered in the simulation, given the first law of thermodynamics, the conservation of energy, we know that energy allocation in the universe isn't infinite. It doesn't fluctuate up or down. It's constant at zero. So we do have a CPU capacity. Can't render everything into existence at once or it start glitching out. So as a tool to prevent that, when we're not looking at, when no conscious being, of course the cameras are observing, but if there isn't a conscious being observing the tape, this mic isn't in the same state. It's not in a finite state. It's in an infinite potentiality of states, just a wave of information. This is the wave-particle duality of life that proves that we are in a simulation. When we leave out of here, everything just becomes an infinite potentiality of states. It's not finitely here, or if I act upon it and move it over here, meaning one location or the other, it goes into an infinite potentiality of states. It's here and over there, and over there. When we're looking at it, it's here or here, or here. But when no one's looking at it, it's just a wave of information.
That's crazy.
This is the Schrodinger equation. This is us observing reality through our senses, causing what's called decoherency of the wave, where it decoheres from that potentiality and collapses. You've heard of the Copenhagen interpretation of the Schrodinger equation, just the observer effect. And when we observe reality, we collapse that potentiality of states into the material world that we've been programmed to believe to be fundamental, the Newtonian belief of materialism. We are in a simulation, but the important thing is that there's an objective purpose of the simulation and the importance of objectivity in itself from a cultural perspective. Yes, the purpose of life is that this is an entropy reduction trainer. You need to evolve from fear, disorder, chaos, confusion, randomness, unpredictability by reducing hidden information, increasing structure, increasing routine, habit, automation. You're able to think about what I said earlier with the ability of our brains to restructure rapidly, neuroplasticity, the malleable, moldable state of our brains. Within 21 days, you can completely rewire your neurological circuitry and go from the victim fuckboy mentality to the victor champion mentality, the warrior mentality that's needed in society. Now, in terms of I'm spacing a little bit, got a lot of threads going. I appreciate the opportunity to speak
Yeah, I got
and to
you.
connect with all the people. So it is important that we need leaders to emerge who can concretely demonstrate how to do the right thing, as opposed to do what creates the outcome they're looking for. The Machiavellian, deceitful tactic, which is high entropy, which is hidden information.
Mm.
I'm back to where I was. Reality being an entropy reduction trainer, how we do that is by increasing certainty through reducing hidden information. When you came into your partnership with Charlie, based on your synergistically compounding relationship, diverse skills, diverse resources, did you become more or less certain about the possibility of your show reaching the levels that you intended it to reach?
I would say more certain.
Of course, that's reducing hidden information. The work you put in, the lessons you've learned from your failures with drop shipping and conspicuous consumption in the trading card market and these type of things. Are you more certain of being able to attain upward mobility through financially sound decisions?
More certain.
As you reduce hidden information through experience, through knowledge acquisition, through analyzing data in your life, through ruminating upon your experiences, you become more certain of the outcomes. You subconsciously impose upon your will upon yourself with a stack of proof. See, you could fool everyone in this world with the things that are coming out of your mouth. You can convince people you're a hardworking, transparent individual who deserves success. You're the GOAT. You got things coming. All that matters is if you subconsciously believe it to be true for yourself. All that matters is impressing your subconscious and God. By answering the calling, by a level of deservedness in your approach. Now, I'm talking about the objective purpose of reality being to lower entropy, to evolve from fear towards love, towards unity. What is God? God is the whole that subsumes every individual component of this universe. Think of how God, the universe, and man itself are similar in that aspect. We have 40 trillion individual conscious cells that are interconnected, interdependent, allowing for consciousness to emerge. This ties into an idea of really understanding that the hierarchical nested scale of reality and another wild phenomenon that increases probability for us being in a simulation. We're at base reality. If you look into a microscope, you can look at the biological level and see 40 trillion individual interconnected components. Now this also ties in to understanding complexity and being able to differentiate complex systems from complicated systems. A computer is a complicated system. It's got a linear progression that can be explicated, like a blueprint to a house. Can a house fix itself? Can a computer fix itself? Complex systems, because of emergence and interconnectivity of its components, have the ability to self-recover and self-repair. Human bodies can repair themselves. Our culture, this culture war that we've been dealing with, the polarized society that's preventing a shared sense-making capacity, can be healed by a return to objectivity, which is reorienting ourselves back towards actual morality, the ladder of morality. People need to be reoriented towards beauty, love, objectivity. This is what will allow us to start to synergize. I talked earlier about synergy being constructive interference. What's the other end of the spectrum?
Deconstructive?
Deconstructive interference. That's beautiful, which is negative synergy. Think about if you and Charlie had the exact same skill set, didn't have a shared vision of the future, which means you weren't elegantly coordinated. You're actually going to break down previously existing structures. Don't you see that's what society is right now? Everyone wants what everyone else has.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be authentic. No one wants to be sacrificial and devoted to actually isolating themselves and creating a product that is demanded by the people because it increases the standard of living. Why do you think our consumption patterns are being nudged?
Why?
Because we're not producing anymore. After the Patriot Act, after 9/11, these big tech overlords, they data mine everything that we have an interest in. And they have split testing mechanisms to ensure customized marketing to get us to buy their shit. Through culture, through our own proclivity for looking for quick fix solutions to problems, the fragility. Now, I'm talking about complex systems. There's a concept called anti-fragility. We are anti-fragile by definition, meaning complex systems actually get stronger when you stress the boundaries. Spiritual development comes from resiliency, overcoming hard times. And now, anti-fragile, the concept of anti-fragility from Nicholas Taleb distinguishes between resiliency and anti-fragility. It's one thing if you're dealing with life storms and you just stay afloat. It's another thing to actually get stronger and more adaptive from dealing with difficult things. And that's the nature of complex systems, society, culture, humanity, individuals. It ties into, the placebo effect and the importance, as I said earlier, about your own belief in molding your reality. Look at someone like Dr. Sebi. You can believe all you want about his ability as a healer. The main factor in his ability to help people heal was the placebo effect. By him convincing a lot of people that his protocol is going to increase their health, they experience those symptoms just from that low entropy perspective, high certainty that he's going to get me right. He's going to heal me. He's a holistic healer of the highest quality. You're familiar with the placebo nocebo, right?
Yeah.
For those that don't know, if you trust your mother more than anything in this world, low entropy, she's never hidden anything from you that you deserve to know about. She's never been non-transparent with you. She's never deceived you. You know she loves you more than anything. If you have a headache as a child and she comes in with a sugar pill or a water pill and tells you, here, take this Advil, honey, it's gonna alleviate your headache, you will experience the same symptoms of taking an actual Advil. On the other end of the spectrum, the nocebo effect. You notice how they tell us, don't go outside unless you have sunblock on. Well, if you actually, at a certain level of certainty, believe that to be true, you shouldn't go outside with sunblock. If you're certain that the sun is an influx of energy that allows us to lower entropy at the local level. See, earlier I said the second law of thermodynamics is the increase of entropy in an isolated or closed system. But Earth is not a closed system. And why is that?
Why?
Because the sun gives us an influx of energy. In physics, information and energy are two sides of the same coin. This is what allows new arrangements of configurations to emerge. We get energy from the sun that allows us to perpetuate life, and lower entropy at the micro, at the local level, at the cost of exporting it at the macro. This is why it all ties into the objective purpose of life. We're here to lower entropy as individuals, as collectives, and literally, the second law, that the universe is becoming more and more entropic, more and more chaotic, more and more disordered, more and more confusing to speculate upon. It's incredible. It's liberating to know that you're in a virtual reality simulation. Earlier, I spoke about the hierarchical scales, nested scales. We're at base reality. We look one scale down to the biological level. 40 trillion cells that don't have the capacity to understand what it's like to be a conscious being. You understand that? They are conscious. If you remove an individual cell, put it in a petri dish, it's going to move towards energy, towards food, and away from toxins. You can go down to another scale below that, to the molecular level, where these molecules don't have the capacity to understand what it's like to be a cell. You notice that at each transcending scale, there's more capacity, more refinement, which means the lower scales don't have any ability to speculate upon what it's like. We don't have the ability to know what it's like in the eternal, in heaven, if you will. You can go down all the way to what's called the Planck level, which is the fundamental equivalent of a pixel. It's essentially 32 scales down from base reality. So basically, 32 scales to the Planck length, which is the fundamental equivalent of a pixel, further proving that we're in a simulation in a pixelated reality in a digital universe. When you zoom out to the entire macro perspective of the universe, we are literally in the mean between the macro and micro in our base experience, which is mathematically impossible. Just like all these other instances of intelligent design, like all the cosmological constants, the rate of gravity, the speed of light, all these type of things. Clearly, there's intelligent design. There's a programmer to the simulation. There's a transcending scale to the simulation where the hardware exists that the software is operating on. And that's where our actual consciousness is being uploaded through some type of data exchange. Similarly, do you play video games?
A little bit of Fortnite.
What happens if you put the remote control down in Fortnite? Does your player exhibit consciousness or does it turn into a zombie?
Stops moving.
Now, when you're uploading your consciousness through a data exchange with the remote control, you're telling it to go up and turn left. Is that scene going to be rendered into existence if you didn't make that actual decision?
No.
It renders based on that information that's emerging.
Right.
And that's the exact same thing that happens in this universe. As I talked about the infinite potential, the wave-like state of reality when there's no observation or measurement being made. We're in a simulation. There is a transcending scale. Death itself is what we fear most. We're most uncertain about death, but why would you fear death when you're in a virtual reality that's here to help you evolve towards love, towards certainty, towards order, predictability, consistency, which is the deontological approach that I speak about, doing the right thing and knowing that the chips are going to fall where they may. This is the Stoic approach, controlling everything you can, making sure that there's consonance between your beliefs that are rooted in ethics and morality and integrity and not sacrificing that to fit in and your behaviors and having consonance between your goals and your reality, as opposed to justifying any means to attain that end, which is what we're seeing now, which is why we have such a polarized society, these multipolar traps that are creating an arms race to the bottom. We have young girls that are unable to view themselves as valid in the social media marketplace unless this is what Baudrillard, the philosopher, the inspiration behind the Matrix in his book, Simulacra and Simulation, called the Hyperreal. Young girls see a Kylie Jenner who's had her face sculpted, who's had breast enhancements, her chin done, all these alterations before the photo shoot, where then she's spending money on makeup, hairdressers, all types of shit. And then after the photo, there's post alterations, like fine tuning the face. A young girl competing in the social media market now says, how am I going to compete with this if I don't go bigger? I need bigger implants. I need more facial surgery. All these women look like Kardashians now. It's crazy. There's no authenticity. There's no individuality. This is the hyperreal. This is a simulation of what a woman's supposed to look like. The beauty of a woman, the form of a woman is supposed to inspire us, but now it's all cookie cutter conveyor belt beauty.
100%.
It's all quick fix solutions to problems. Women aren't trying to hit the gym and so obviously there's outliers, but you see the rise of Ozempic, which is the fucking devil's temptation. Women think that they're actually benefiting from losing weight when in actuality their body fat's going up because it's eating through their muscle and bone density. So they're less heavy, but they have a higher distribution of fat in their body weight. The quick fix corporate solutions taking precedent over objective truth. And I hope we can all come together once again, find common ground, eliminate the extremism in society. Obviously, nihilists only feel extremism. That's why people like Nick Fuentes and Myron Gaines and Tate and Ye are prioritized in the culture, but it's causing civilizational collapse. And the antidote to all of this is a return to male exceptionalism, devotion to the eternal, reorienting ourselves back towards God and love. I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, bro. That was cool.
Sure. Appreciate that,
Check them
brother.
out, guys. See you next time.
Thank you. I love you all.